Pete, I know you have a great memory, and I just thought we'd get some of the baseball things out of the way. Going along the way in pursuit of Ty Cobb, do you remember your 1,000th hit?
Yes, sir. I was off Carl Morton down in Atlanta at that time. He was Rookie of the Year for the Atlanta Ball Club, and you know, he passed away a couple years ago at a very young age, so he's a fine pitcher.
Do you remember your first hit?
Sure, everybody remembers their first hit. It was at Crosby Field. It was my 5th at-bat. It was against Bob Friend. It was a triple down the left field line.
All right, what about hit number 2,000?
2000, I missed getting it here in Cincinnati, and I got it off of Ron Bryan at Candlestick Park in front of a big crowd of about 4,300.
What about hit number 3,000?
Well, 2,500 was right here against Bruce Keeson the last day before we went on a long road trip, and of course 3,000 was right here against the Montreal Expos, and that was kind of ironic because it was off of Steve Rogers, and the guy who presented me the ball was Tony Perez in a Montreal uniform, and I had a Cincinnati uniform on. And last year when we came back, I had a chance to get my 4,000 hit with me in a Montreal uniform and him playing first in a Cincinnati uniform, but I walked 4 times and grounded out once.
When you broke Stan Musial's record?
Well, that was off of Mark Littell, 36-31, and I might add it was the first day back after the 81 strike, because I tied the record off of Nolan Ryan the day before the strike went into effect.
What about that 4,000th hit? Who was that against?
My old team, the Philadelphia Phillies, who I played with before I went to Montreal, and it was off of Jerry Kuzman. It was a double down the right field line.
So a lot of the things you have done occurred right here in Cincinnati, including the last day of what? Ty Cobb's career, wasn't it his anniversary?
Right, it was 57 years to the day that he pinched hit for the last time, and when he pinched hit, he went back home. I don't know why he went back home, but he just decided to retire at that time.
When you broke Stan Musial's record, was there any particular feeling about that? Any feeling of great accomplishment, or did you always have your eyes set on something greater?
No. I think it was great to do that because I was a National Leaguer for my whole career, and when I went through the free agency, I didn't go to the American League because I wanted to have the all-time National League hit lead, and Musial was a great hitter, and it took me, what, 17, 18 years and a half to surpass him. So,
did the 44-game hitting streak take a lot out of you?
No, it was kind of fun. It was doing your job, Vinny, for, you know, what I'm paid to do when I'm playing is to score runs and get base hits. It just so happens in that streak I got base hits for 44 games in a row. But the way we handled it as far as the press, being off alone after the game and before the game, which didn't inconvenience any of my teammates, it was no problem. It was the same way when I got into single digits going toward Ty Cobb. It's a lot easier for me, Vinny, to come out here every day about 2 hours before the game and talk to the press and then talk to them after the game instead of doing all the one-on-ones.
So,
right, but the 44-game hitting streak was a lot more pressure because you have to get a hit every night to keep the streak going. The Cobb thing, you go 0 for 4, 0 for 4, and you go 3 for 4, and you're right back in the race.
Categorize quickly for me the pitchers. Who is the best, the fastest, the wiliest, whatever?
Well, I think the best pitcher I ever faced was Marichal. Now, most of the pitchers I'm going to name are guys that I faced when I was a kid. The hardest thrower was Koufax. The guy who gave me the most trouble was Randy Jones. I'm like 14 for 86 off of him or something like that. And I think the 2 best competitors I ever faced are Jim Bunning and Bob Gibson. Now, that doesn't mean to take anything away from Seaver. No. I think the most consistent, Carlton. Also, I played with Tom Seaver. I played against Warren Spahn and people like that, Don Drysdale, Nolan Ryan. They were all great pitchers, but the ones I named stick in my mind because I was a kid when I was hitting off of them.
Pete, we've pretty much gotten your accomplishments out of the way. I think people would like to know what makes Pete Rose tick a little bit. First of all, as someone on the outside looking in, I was forever reading about your reference to your dad. Consequently, he had a tremendous influence on your life. What about your mom?
Well, I think I really got my baseball ability from my mother's side of the family because she got 3 older brothers who were all great ball players. And matter of fact, the one, my Uncle Buddy, was a scout to sign me to a professional contract. He's the one who didn't become a success in professional baseball until the age 30 when he became a switch hitter. So that's why my father and him put their minds together and decided to make me a switch hitter. But my mom's still living. She lives in Florida, but she was here for the Ty Cobb hit.
Oh,
my father passed away in December of 1970, so he got to see some batting championships, 1 World Series, an All-Star game in '70, and different things that exposed me to sports, Vinny. Like I do my son. He didn't make me play. He just exposed me and made me understand how much fun it was and how much dedication to put into it and different things like that.
You said you've cried twice in your life, when he died and when you got the Cobb hit, and we can actually roll the tape for a split second and show your base hit. When you got to first, you tried to hold it back, and you had been
7 minutes.
Was it 7 minutes you held it back?
I held it back for 7 minutes, and you know, when you're out there for about everything that's happened, and all of a sudden you had a lot more time to start thinking about people who made it possible. And all of a sudden, for some unknown reason, I just looked up in the sky and I started thinking about my father, because I just got through acknowledging my mother sitting behind home plate here. And the last time I cried as an adult was of course, at my father's funeral. So those are the 2 times I've cried.
You put your head on Tommy Helms' shoulder and cried?
Just sing to me, and I've been through a lot of wars with Tommy Helms. He's my roommate early in my career, and of course I played with him in the minor leagues. Then my son came out.
Yeah, that was the killer, I think.
Well, you know, I didn't ask him to come out. He just come out. I guess that's the kind of kid he is. And
Pete, of all the questions, is there a question that sticks in your mind?
Yeah, I got a kick out of the reporters. Thought I was going to be able to answer what my feeling was going to be when I got the hit, and my answer was, well, you never know what your feeling is going to be when you go through something like that until the emotions of the crowd are let off, and then all of a sudden they'll dictate how I'm going to feel. And needless to say, we have to go no longer as far as what the crowd did for me the other night.
Pete, in your career and looking back, are you superstitious at all?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't approach the game the same way day in and day out. I just try to be consistent. I don't worry about stepping over a line or doing this with the ring or anything like that. I just try to go out there and play hard every day. Do
you ever dream about baseball? It's such a great part of your life.
I think I have dreams about baseball occasionally. You know, and
is it a recurring dream, the same one?
No, usually the dreams are a postseason play. You know, because big things have happened to you in World Series or playoff. But it doesn't happen that much to get the base hit, it seems like.
Isn't that the way?
That's the way it is.
Pete, what about in your early days? Did you ever hit a low spot where you thought maybe you might not make it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I had any low spots. Just starting out, in my second year, I learned that I went to Venezuela to play winter ball, and when I came back, I hit 300 the first 9 years. So even after being Rookie of the Year, I still had a little problem my second year, and I had to go to winter ball and work on things.
It's over now. You've accomplished that. Is Pete Rose, the player, just about finished?
Well, I'm still having fun, Vinny, and I think I still can contribute. And you know, I got a good upcoming team, and hopefully I can help this ball club win next year. If not, the Dodgers like they're going to be awfully tough this year. And you know, I like to shut her down after I win 2,000 games as a player, and I'm still 80-some short of that. You know,
there was a note in the paper that Pete Rose started 1 year after the Houston franchise, more wins in his big league career than the Houston franchise, which tells you a lot.
Well, I think that's a credit to the ball clubs I've been on, and of course the teammates. I can sit here all day and you've seen a lot of great players, and I've played with a lot of great players right here at Cincinnati and of course at Philadelphia.
What was the other note? You have over 1,000 hits in ballparks that no longer exist. It makes you feel almost eternal.
Feel like a piece of stone sitting here.
I bet you must feel something like a ride in Disneyland all year long with the attention.
Well, it's amazing when you look at my stats and how comparable they are on AstroTurf and on natural grass fields. And I played about the same amount of games here at Riverfront as I did at Crosley Field.
Did you ever get kicked out of a game?
Yeah, I got kicked out a couple weeks ago for an interference call at first base. I haven't been kicked out that many times, probably 6 or 7 times my whole life, most of those when I was a kid.
And New York will remember Pete Rose scuffling with Buddy Harrelson at second base. Did you ever get into a fight with another player?
Yeah, we've been in some fights before. We had a real big Donnybrook with the St. Louis Cardinals one time.
Where you were personally involved?
Yeah, I was fighting a guy named Jim Cosman, a big pitcher. It was just because he was the closest guy to me. It was just one of those deals where it was a spectacular. It should have made all the wire services.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm not only glad you survived all those fights, but I'm glad you survived the 44-game hitting streak. We're glad you survived all the pressure in pursuit of Ty Cobb, and particularly with all the bad news in the newspapers and in the media today about drugs and the trial in Pittsburgh. Thank goodness, thank God for Pete Rose.
Well, we tried to put that on the back page. I think we did a pretty good job of it. Thank you, Vinny.
Okay, our guest, Pete Rose. More after this.